What's going on, everyone? So, it officially happened. Kevin Durant was traded to the Houston Rockets, and Houston didn't give up really anything. They gave up Jalen Green, which, I've even talked about him on this channel, and, maybe looking to add him and take a flyer on him if you can get him cheap enough. Because there are moments where you look at him and you watch him play, and you're like, that guy might be, the best shooting guard in all of basketball in 2 years. And then there's other games where you watch him and you're like, that guy might be out of the league in 2 years, right? He's just so inconsistent all over the place. But he's incredibly young, incredibly talented, incredibly gifted, no doubts about it. But, Houston had their questions about him, and you're replacing him with Kevin Durant. They also gave up Dillon Brooks, who was a very good, solid, added toughness, gave him some 3-and-D capabilities, but they still have all their young guys. They didn't give up any of their young players. They gave up the number 10 pick in this year's draft, which I don't think is a huge deal because, again, they have a plethora of youthful young guys. And then on top of that, gave up 5 seconds. They didn't even give up any other first. They didn't give up any Phoenix first. They gave up nothing. They could still go make another big move in a big trade and big acquisition. But if you want more details on the trade and kind of my thoughts specifically on that trade, did a whole video on As It Stands NBA, which, is my sports channel talking about all the other teams and all the news. Go check that out. I'll even link it in the description. I also made a community post about it. But I want to talk about how this impacts the Lakers and really the league, period. But obviously there's a Laker channel, so I want to kind of focus more on the Lakers. But in general, one, this is huge because it basically stops the hold, right? Where if this would have bled into the actual offseason and stuff, like everyone's going to most likely wait around. Now, you might have a couple trade like the Desmond Bane trade, stuff like that. You might have a couple teams that are willing to make some trades that are like, hey, we're not going to be affected by the Kevin Durant trade regardless, but a good majority are probably were probably going to wait around to see where does Kevin Durant go, because depending on where Kevin Durant goes depends on moves that teams are going to make, right? He goes to Houston is very different than him going to like the Spurs or Miami or something like that, right? Because for the Lakers and teams in the Western Conference in particular, him going east doesn't really impact you unless Miami ends up making it to the NBA Finals and you make it to the NBA Finals, right? But him staying west and going to the number 2 seed last year in the Houston Rockets absolutely impacts teams like the Lakers and, the other teams in the Western Conference, because it's like Houston just got better. They didn't trade any of their key core guys, right? And, now it's like, okay, well, now you're going to have to compete and keep up. Here's the thing, though. I don't know how much better Houston is with Kevin Durant. I'm not saying that they aren't better. They are absolutely better, right? But are they better than teams like OKC, like Denver, right? Depending on what the Lakers do, might not even be better than the Lakers, right? And I know people are, they were the 2 seed last year. Again, Sacramento was the 2 seed a couple years. Look at them, right? Again, there's a lot of factors. Like playoff seeding doesn't necessarily translate to overall success. I mean, look at Indiana, for example. But obviously, the Lakers have to make moves regardless. Now, I don't think that this should be a panic move. Again, Houston might be much better, but Kevin Durant's still your primary scoring option, right? He's still going to have to be essentially everything offensively for you on a regular basis, right? Where if he went to a team like the Spurs or something like that, he can have a bad offensive night and you still could be great offensively. Well, on Houston, if he has a bad offensive night, they might struggle to score, but they do have the youth, the athleticism, the defense, all the things necessary around a Kevin Durant to where I do think they'll be good. I'm not saying that they won't be. Maybe they are a contender. I don't know. I need to see, what does that look like? Does he give you more production than Dillon Brooks and Jalen Green? Not talking about just scoring. Talking about just overall production, the defense, the toughness, the scoring, the playmaking, all of those things. There is a potential where they are better. They'll definitely be more consistent with Kevin Durant, but is that consistency enough to take them over the top? That's something we'll have to see, right? Also, this could start a snowball and kind of chain reaction that kind of leads to, teams really kind of gearing up and going through this sort of arms race to try to, claim the number 1 spot. And, that could bode well for the Lakers, right? Because that means there's going to be multiple players and moving parts and pieces. And even this trade may end up getting expanded because this trade can't be finalized till July 6th. And supposedly the Phoenix Suns are looking to maybe reroute a Jalen Green. So again, maybe Lakers can get involved in that, not even necessarily for a Jalen Green, but just get involved in maybe being a third or fourth team and kind of maybe getting some pieces and whatnot, right? The Celtics supposedly want to get off of Drew Holiday's thing. So maybe this is like a big expanded trade where Lakers maybe are, because they have expiring contracts, maybe they're getting a Drew Holiday and another piece, right? Maybe Jalen Green's going to the Celtics or something like that, right? Because maybe they'd be like, yeah, well, we have to pay both guys the same, but this guy's a lot younger, right? And gives us more offensive versatility. Maybe him and Jaylen Brown kind of spend a year. I don't know. We'll see how this kind of all plays out. But there is the potential that this could kind of gear teams up for I think this is going to be a wild offseason regardless. I mean, even Shams came out and was like, dude, I'm like ready for this to be one of, if not the wildest, most action-packed offseasons ever. Hopefully it's not one of those things where the hype builds up and then it really is nothing. But I mean, you've already seen some pretty significant trades, right? The Desmond Bane trade, Kevin Durant trade, and I imagine that this is going to be kind of this slew of trades. I do think that the Houston and Suns trade is going to get expanded. I do think that there will be more teams involved at some point. Again, they'll have kind of some time. I am surprised that they announced this the day of the NBA Finals. Right, I'm sure the NBA is not super thrilled and happy about this. It's like you couldn't have waited a day or two, right? Kind of let it kind of marinate. You still have like 4 days before the draft, so it's like you have plenty of time. You could have announced this on like Tuesday and let us kind of have our moment. But regardless, I think this is huge for Houston. I think this potentially could be game-changing for Houston. But does Houston now become one of the top 3 teams in all of basketball? I don't know. It's possible. What does Şengün look like? And can he kind of continue to elevate and increase? Amen Thompson, what does he start to look like? He could be special, right? You got Jabari Smith and all these other guys. Do they go and make another big move and another big splash because they have other guys, right? Like Houston could kind of continue to do things, and that could put the pressure on the Lakers, right? Where it's like, hey, we need to be able to compete with these guys, right? So does this end up making them and forcing the Lakers' hand to kind of push their chips in a little more and go like, okay, well, not only do we need a center, we need guys that can defend Kevin Durant and Houston and all these guys. We need X, Y, and Z. Now, I don't know if this necessarily, look, the Lakers' needs are the Lakers' needs regardless. But do the Lakers maybe go get a guy that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise, where they're kind of like, or do they maybe make a trade that they wouldn't have done otherwise, right? Like, do they maybe now look to trade Austin Reeves? Because it's like, man, we're going to need kind of the depth and versatility and switchability for a team like Houston, where, now they got Kevin Durant, and they got Şengün, and they got Amen Thompson. We need, those defensive switchable wings and whatnot, right? That could be a possibility. A lot of directions that this could go. Obviously, look, I want the Lakers to stay the course, right? Because, the Spurs, I talked about it with the Spurs. I don't know, what does Kevin Durant do for these teams, given his age? He's still an incredible talent, an incredible player, no doubt about it. But there are injury questions and concerns, right? And again, he's not what he was when he was 27, right? So again, is he enough to elevate and raise the ceiling for a team, which again, we're the number 2 seed to their credit. But the big problem with Houston was they can't score the basketball, right? That's their problem. And yes, they just went and got an elite scorer in Kevin Durant, but you need more than one offensive option in order to win, especially once you get to the playoffs and you're playing all these elite defenses and, offensive teams and stuff. And it's it's Kevin Durant versus, even the Lakers, Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves. Is Kevin Durant going to be able to outscore 2 or 3 of those guys because the rest of Houston isn't going to be able to score enough points? And, it's just again, if Kevin Durant takes you from, let's say, Houston's 110 points and Kevin Durant takes you to 115, but, teams are still scoring 117, and you're still losing games, right? So, again, you have to be able to compete with this, which is why I think Houston might look to make another move. I wouldn't be shocked if they look to kind of pony up and hey, let's go make this move or that move. Can we trade? Can we kind of consolidate some of these young guys and go get that other piece and really kind of push our chips in? Maybe they upgrade at the point guard position or something, right? There could be some moves there, some potential there. But as far as the Lakers go, I'm glad that things can start getting moved, because we've seen in recent years, right, that star becomes available. Everyone's kind of just waiting, let's see what happens with him. And then, because they want to know, like, okay, well, based on where he goes, what he went for, also the package that, because that was the big question with Desmond Bain, was like, well, the package that did that just set the market? Did that just become something? Well, look at what Kevin Durant went for, right? It's like, you talk about, still, I understand his age and all that, but he's still a top 15 player in the league. And people thought he was going to go for more than what Desmond Bain went for, right? Like, oh, he's the better player. And, you can make an argument, it's kind of a wash, right? Because they got more players than picks, but also Phoenix is a team that needs more players than picks and whatnot. But it's one of those things where, the Lakers could use that and point and go like, hey, look, Kevin Durant went for really a pedestrian package, in my opinion. Right? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, they got some value, but it is a pedestrian package for especially what Phoenix gave up to go get Kevin Durant. Obviously, you weren't going to get what you gave up for because he was also 34 years younger, right? Very different between a 33-year-old Kevin Durant and a 37-year-old Kevin Durant. But the point is, like, that could bode well for the Lakers. But we'll see. I could see this potentially being this kind of gear up in an arms race now, right? Because teams are like, hey, Houston already was really good, already gave, a team like the Warriors some fits, right? What are the Warriors? The Warriors could be looking, they need a center. Do they go and start, making some more pushes and stuff? So, going to be interesting. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot, as we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Now subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.